If you drive the back roads of Lancaster County, Pennsylvania, you will start to notice them. Long, narrow barns with strange vertical slats running down the sides. Some of those slats are propped open like the gills of a fish, and if you slow down enough and the season is right, you will see what's hanging inside. Rows and rows of leaves, the size of dinner plates, going from green to gold in the dark. Those are tobacco sheds, and the people who built them, the people who still tend the fields around them, are about the last group of Americans you would ever expect to be growing tobacco. A plain, quiet, deeply religious community that rejects cars, rejects most of the modern world, and dresses like it's still 1850, the Amish. I want to be clear about something right at the start. This video is for people over 18, and it is not here to tell you to smoke anything. I do not care whether you ever touch tobacco in your life. What I care about, what I got pulled into, is the craft, because the way these families grow this plant is one of the most labor-intensive, hands-on, almost stubbornly old-fashioned forms of farming left in this country. And once you understand why they grow it, you understand something much bigger about how they think about work, money, and land. So, let me show you how a plain family turns a seed smaller than a grain of sand into a crop that has paid the mortgage on farms for over 150 years. Here's the question I couldn't shake. Of every crop on earth, why this one? And the answer, when it finally clicked for me, was almost embarrassingly practical. It comes down to math. An Amish farm is small. We're not talking about the 1,000-acre operations you fly over in the Midwest. A lot of these family farms are 60, 80, maybe 100 acres, and they're worked without tractors, without the big diesel machinery that lets one man cover enormous ground. So, if your land is limited and your labor is all human, you can't win by going big. You have to win by going valuable. You need a crop that pays a lot of money per acre. Tobacco does exactly that. On a single acre, properly grown, tobacco has historically returned more cash than almost anything else a small farmer could plant. And the reason it pays so well is the same reason most farmers won't touch it. It is brutally, relentlessly labor-intensive. And that, right there, is the whole trick. Because a crop that demands endless hands is a problem for a modern farm trying to cut payroll, but it is a perfect fit for a family with 8, 10, 12 children who all work the land together. The thing that makes tobacco a headache for everyone else is the thing that makes it ideal for the Amish. Their disadvantage, no machines, lots of people, suddenly becomes their edge. So, tobacco wasn't some accident or some scandal. It was a deliberate, generations-deep economic decision. The Pennsylvania Dutch have grown what they called seed leaf tobacco since the 1800s, sold mostly as filler and binder for cigars. It was never glamorous. It was just smart. Now let's actually grow it. And it starts with something almost comically small. A tobacco seed is tiny. I mean genuinely tiny. Like fine ground pepper, like dust. You could hold tens of thousands of them in your palm, which is the first headache, because you cannot just walk down a row, dropping one seed at a time. It's physically impossible. So they're started in beds, sprinkled across the surface of fine, moist soil, barely covered at all, because a seed that small can't push up through any real depth of dirt. For weeks, those beds get watched, watered carefully so the seeds don't wash away, protected from the cold of early spring, until thousands of thread-like green sprouts come up together in a carpet. They're thinned, they're tended, and they grow into transplants strong enough to survive in open ground. And then comes the part that breaks people's backs. Every single one of those seedlings gets moved into the field by hand, one at a time. Bent over, working down the row, setting each little plant into the soil and firming it in. Thousands of plants. And on a traditional farm, you might be doing it with a horse-drawn transplanter and a couple of family members riding low to the ground, feeding plants into the earth as the rig creeps forward. This is hour one of a job that does not really stop until winter. Here's what nobody tells you about tobacco. The planting isn't the hard part. The babysitting is. Tobacco is a needy, demanding plant. Once it's in the ground and growing, those huge leaves are basically an open invitation to every pest in the county. The big one is the hornworm, a fat, green caterpillar as long as your finger that can strip a plant to the stem if you let it. And in a community that's wary of dumping chemicals everywhere, a lot of that pest control comes down to exactly what you'd think. Walking the rows, looking, picking them off by hand. Then there's topping. When the plant tries to flower at the top, you snap that flower head off. Why? Because you don't want the plant spending its energy making seeds. You want all that energy driven down into the leaves, making them bigger, thicker, richer. So you walk the whole field and top every plant. And then, because you topped it, the plant fights back. It tries to grow little side shoots, called suckers, out of every joint along the stalk. Each sucker steals strength from the leaves, so you have to go back through the field and pull every one of them off, by hand, and then they grow back. So you do it again, and again. Suckering can mean going through the same field, plant by plant, several times in a season. I want you to really sit in that for a second. There is no machine doing this. It's a person in the heat, in the dust, moving down a row of plants taller than they are, touching every single one, over and over, all summer. This is where the family thing stops being a quaint detail and starts being the entire engine of the operation. By late summer, the plants are enormous, shoulder height, chest height, broad, sticky leaves that coat your hands and arms with a dark resin you can smell on yourself for the rest of the day. And the harvest is its own art. With this kind of tobacco, you often don't pick leaf by leaf. You take the whole stalk, a sharp blade, a downward cut near the base, and the entire plant comes down. Then those heavy stalks get speared onto wooden laths, long sticks, several plants per stick, until each one is loaded and heavy and dripping. And those laths have to be carried, hauled by wagon, and lifted up into the shed, up into the rafters, tier by tier, men passing them hand to hand, climbing higher into the barn, hanging the season's entire crop in the air to begin the part of the process that no amount of effort can rush, the curing. Remember those slats on the side of the shed, the ones propped open like gills? Now you find out what they're for. Our curing is exactly what it sounds like. No furnaces, no fans, no heat, just the tobacco hanging in the dark and air moving slowly through the barn. The whole job of the farmer at this stage is to play the weather. Too much humidity and the leaves rot, they go moldy and the crop is ruined. Too dry, too fast, and the leaf cures harsh and brittle and brown-green and never develops the color or the smell you want. So those slatted walls get opened and closed, day after day, week after week, chasing the right balance of moisture and airflow as the seasons turn. And inside that shed, slowly, the magic happens. The leaves shift from a fresh, grassy green to a deep yellow, and finally down into rich browns. Starches in the leaf break down into sugars. The raw, sharp smell of the green plant mellows into that warm, sweet, unmistakable tobacco aroma that soaks into the whole building. This takes weeks. Often it stretches into months, hanging right through the fall and into the cold. You cannot make it go faster. You just have to know how to read it, and then wait. For a community that measures success in patience rather than speed, it is almost a perfect crop. Then comes winter, and the work moves indoors. This is the part I love the most, because it is where the whole operation turns social. Once the leaves are cured and brought down, they have to be stripped from the stalks and sorted, by grade, by size and quality and condition. It is slow, careful, sit-down work. And so, families gather in the stripping room through the dark months, sometimes neighbors too, hands moving steadily while they talk and tell stories, and the kids learn the trade by doing it. It is, in a strange way, a season of its own. Outside, the fields are frozen and empty. Inside, the warmth of bodies and the smell of cured tobacco and the slow, sociable rhythm of getting the crop ready to sell. The grated leaves get bundled, baled, and eventually carried off to a buyer. And then, finally, after a year that started with dust-sized seeds in early spring, the family gets paid. So, that's the craft. But I'd be lying to you if I left it there, all warm and nostalgic, because the real story has a harder edge. For one thing, tobacco has never sat easily, even within these communities. The Amish are not one single group. There are dozens of affiliations with different rules, and while many of the more traditional old order families have grown and used tobacco for generations, some of the newer, stricter groups, the New Order Amish, ban it outright, tobacco and alcohol both. So even among the plain people, this crop has always been a quiet point of tension, a thing some grow and some have walked away from on principle. And the bigger truth is this: Amish tobacco is fading. For most of the 20th century, federal programs propped up tobacco prices and gave small farmers a guaranteed market. Then in 2004, the government ended that system in a massive buyout, and the floor fell out from under small-scale growers. Add to that a country smoking less every year, changing markets, and younger families looking at all that back-breaking hand labor and quietly deciding there are easier ways to make a living. Produce, greenhouses, dairy, furniture, construction crews. So those sheds I told you about at the start, the ones with the gills, a lot of them stand half empty now. Some have been converted, some just lean a little more each year. The crop that built these farms is slipping into history, kept alive by the families who still see something in it worth the work. And maybe that is the part that stays with me, because when you strip it all down, this was never really a story about tobacco. It's a story about a people who looked at a plant nobody else wanted to bother with, a plant that demanded everything and saw not a burden but a fit, a crop that rewarded exactly what they had in abundance: patience, family, skilled hands, time.